He is Jalen
What
Rondos.
up,
I'm
dog?
David Jacoby. We are Jalen Jacoby. What is it that we do?
give the people what they want.
Jalen, we have some news from the NBA. We knew it would happen, and it has happened. A superstar has tested positive for the coronavirus. Russell Westbrook let us know with this tweet that prior to joining his team in the bubble, he has tested positive. He's feeling well, and he's looking forward to joining his team. Jalen, I think this is an indication of just how safe the bubble is going to be, not how dangerous the bubble is going to be. What do you think of this news?
Well, I think there's a major distinction here, Jacoby. One that if you test positive while you're in the bubble, the mechanism set up in order for you to then be able to compete. Testing before you enter the bubble creates other barriers potentially before you actually are able to get cleared in order to participate. And he's not the only one from their team that isn't in the bubble. James Harden, Bamute. We'll see what happens with those three players, but Houston is one of those squads. If they can get hot in the Western Conference with those two MVP caliber players that can make a run in this playoff.
The coronavirus is an extremely unpredictable disease. On some people, there are asymptomatics. There are no symptoms. And if that's the case with Russell Westbrook, we could see him come back before the playoffs even start. However, it's just so unpredictable. It could have serious health implications, and we wish him the best. It is now time for some broken news.
To everyone else, it's breaking news. To Jalen and Jacoby listeners, it's broken news.
Jalen, it wasn't a question of whether or not the Washington football team would change their name. It was just a question of when, and that question has been answered. It is this morning they announced that they will no longer use their team name and their logo. Jalen, why did it take them so long, and what do you think?
That's why I'm really fortunate I get to carry a bat, and we get a chance to embody the culture even when we're not speaking, and retire words on this program. That's why this is broken news. Words like bust or shipped or wife beater. We stopped calling the NFL team from Washington their logo years ago. Not because we're such great guys or we're so very intelligent. We just know it was offensive. But my problem with this is Dan Snyder and the arrogance of not doing it until you're basically forced by your sponsors. I'm really appreciative that it was happening. But again, every time I get confused, Jacoby, and sometimes I think black, sometimes I think white. And then there's a sense that I have that tells me to follow the money. And that's what happened here.
That's exactly what happened here. I mean, the same man who said he would never change it, all of a sudden some sponsors start dropping out, and Nike stops selling their stuff, their merchandise on their site. And then all of a sudden he has a change of heart and he decides it's the right thing to do, because it absolutely is the right thing to do, not just now, not just when you're forced to do it financially. It's been the right thing to do for decades. And there's another angle to this that I want to bring to light. The Atlanta baseball team has said that they will not change their name. Now, it's the same thing as the Washington football team. While the Atlanta baseball team's name and the Kansas City football team and the Chicago hockey team's name aren't as offensive as the Washington football team's name, they are still offensive, and they will change in time. I just wish they would get on the right side of history now instead of later. What do you think about Atlanta baseball team's decision?
Over time, teams change mascots. They change logos. These things happen whether they just get outdated and or you realize the true meaning offends others. And so in the case of Atlanta and their baseball team, same with Cleveland, Florida State, you mentioned a ton of those institutions and or professional teams. I repeat what Jacoby just said. It is going to happen. It's going to happen. It may not be tonight. It may not be tomorrow. But like we said about Washington's NFL team, it is offensive. Therefore, it will change. But unfortunately, only when it affects the bottom line.
They also said they're not changing the team name, but they're going to look at the quote-unquote tomahawk chalk that the fans do. It shouldn't take until 2020 to realize that tens of thousands of people, many of them white people, going like this and doing the quote-unquote tomahawk chop is maybe not something you should encourage as a business. It shouldn't take this long, but this is where we are in the world today. Well, moving on back to the Orlando bubble. We've talked a lot about the messaging on the back of NBA jerseys and just how far players would go. And then they had to pick from a list of approved terms. And LeBron James and Anthony Davis of the Lakers have decided to put their traditional last name on the back of their jerseys. What do you think of this decision?
I think you're such a professional. When you first said Twitter, I thought you were going to talk about an entanglement of a young lady that said she got invited to the bubble. That's where I thought you were going. I really did. She got blocked and unblocked and followed and unfollowed and invited and uninvited. In all honesty, I appreciate the ceremonial gestures and the statues being taken down and Black Lives Matter being written in the middle of streets, and people continue to grow their awareness about the systemic racism that is taking place in our country. I truly applauded Jacoby, but it's going to take place ultimately when a shift in power and decision-making starts to be of influence. In particular, we're talking about the NBA. Why? Because they're likely the largest and most powerful conglomerate of black men in the world. And we see, because their league is 70% black, they get a chance to influence the narrative. So therefore, we expect them to take every inch of the playing field, almost like field position in football. But for LeBron and or AD to have a word or a gesture on the back of their jersey isn't going to change the dynamics of the movement. I applaud players like Kyle Korver, who will have Black Lives Matter on the back of his jersey. I just hope that the players continue to hold their league responsible for being more inclusive.
I actually like this gesture from both. You mentioned Kyle Korver is going to put Black Lives Matter on the back of his jersey. I think it's important as a white player in the league to recognize that and do that. But I also think it's important for James to keep his last name on for this reason. He understands it is important to get these phrases, these approved phrases out and to support this movement. But he's doing so much more to support the movement outside of that he wants to focus on those things and ending the systemic racism and continuing to fight against social injustice. And that simply putting the words on the back of his jersey is one way to do that, but he's doing it in so many other ways that he doesn't want to get overshadowed by that. Again, he didn't tell me that's what he's thinking, but that's how I read into it.
If they're going to dictate what terms you can use, if you're going to give me a list of words I can use, then I'm good. I might as well use my own name. But again, I will applaud the NBA because they're one of the businesses and corporations that seem to be working with their employees to create an environment of inclusion. And I appreciate that.
Jalen, I have some bad news for my championship pick, the Los Angeles Lakers. Avery Bradley was not joining the team in Orlando, and a player that became much more important because of that, Rajon Rondos, has fractured his thumb. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. If the Lakers make a deep playoff run, we will probably see playoff Rondo return. But just how impactful is this, especially knowing that Avery Bradley is not going to be available to them as well?
It's so very impactful that I know you want to use this guy off the bench to give you instant offense, but now you got to start thinking about putting Kyle Kuzma in the starting lineup and putting AD at the 5. Number one, because Avery Bradley was going to be one of your 4 players that closed the game along with those 3 and Danny Green. Now you're looking for 2 players to close the game, which makes not only Kuzma's role heightened, which why I feel like you got to get him out there early, but now you're looking at players like KCP, who's unheralded but plays quality minutes for them, and Caruso, but then a couple of wild cards and Deion Waiters and J.R. Smith.
I mean, the idea that this could get us more Waiters, more Smith, and more Caruso minutes makes it kind of fun, but it's a big deal because LeBron James does not play 48 minutes. There are times when he is on the bench, and while he's on the bench, the offense flows through Rajon Rondos. He sort of like runs that unit, and I think that this is actually going to be extremely, extremely detrimental to their championship run if he is not able to come back around the conference finals and play his way into shape. And now it's time for a signature segment, cultural or regional.
Let's go.
Jalen, we often talk about this. It is cultural or regional, and it is also news that matters because something is happening in Orlando that I wanted to bring to your attention. It started with JJ Redick, and then it was Myers Leonard. They're engaging in something that I've engaged many times in my life, shotgunning a beer. Let's take a look at these fine young athletes doing what they do best. You see, Reddick's got the sideways sip, which is one technique. You know, I like the way he discards it. But it's Myers Leonard's who just very, very quickly, Myers Leonard takes this thing. He goes with the over the top move, which I really liked as well. Jalen, what do you see from these shotguns? Cultural or regional?
1,000,000% cultural. Look over your left shoulder. Our guys, the Beastie Boys, you fit right in that picture. So much so, they're in your background every day. And you might as well be with JJ. You might as well be with, oh, whoa, what is that? And a Red Bull?
I'm fired up.
Oh,
Let's go to break. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
You such a white.
Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. It is time for Jalen's favorite segment because he gets to decide what we discuss for once. It's time for Keep It Moving. If you would like to discuss the topic, say hit the brakes. If not, me, you, and Method Man jump in the minivan and keep it moving. We start with Cam Newton, who has a message.
Cam.
NFL. Keep it moving or hit the brakes.
The brakes.
Let's check in on Cam Newton's Instagram.
They ain't never seen this Cam. They ain't never seen him. You wanna know how I know? I ain't never seen him. The forgotten Cam, the shit on Cam, tired of being sick of tired Cam.
Jalen, is he talking about the chip on his shoulder, or is he talking about his hair when they say they ain't never seen this Cam?
And he left off the 1 year, $1 million Cam too. And trust me, for a guy that's won MVP, led a team to the Super Bowl, and had a time where people felt like he was the best quarterback and player in the game. Now he's seeing all of these upstarts, these dual threats like Mahomes and Lamar and Russell and Watson take their opportunities, and the league basically gave up on him. Or Cam is about to do work in New England.
I cannot wait to see it. Bill Belichick and Cam Newton. Belichick's got a brand new toy. I can't wait to see what Bill Belichick draws up with a running quarterback. Next, there'll be an important piece of NBA culture missing in the bubble. Keep it moving or hit the brakes.
I'll say keep it moving for now.
All right, we'll keep it moving.
We keep it moving.
It's AAU style. You ain't gonna be able to wear your uniform to and from. You got to be a David Jacoby and leave the game without showering.
You can't say keep it moving and then discuss the topic, man. You're breaking down the foundation of the segment, Jalen. I'm still fired up about that Red Bull. Moving on. Dana White was very critical of some referees after UFC 251 on Fight Island.
Keep it moving for now. Bad judging happens in the UFC and in boxing.
We keep it moving.
Great pulling off Fight Island, though, Dana.
Ben Simmons did something that you and I have never done. Keep it moving or hit the brakes.
Hit the brakes.
Well, Jalen and I have never fished in our lives, and Ben Simmons has. But when he tried to release the fish, the following happened. Watch him try to throw the fish in the big lake. He drops it on the dock. Come on, Ben Simmons. The jokes just write themselves. You can't do that when you don't have a jumper. You can't do that when you don't have a jumper. Jalen, what do you think about his catch and release technique?
I think he had a lot more courage than you and I, because he actually tried to hold the fish with his bare hands, and then he realized that the bare hands were getting bit by teeth. So instead of throwing it in the water, he dropped it. And I see what you mean by the lack of a jump shot, but come on, man, cut on some slack. You couldn't catch anything.
Yeah. One of my fears about fishing is not just catching the fish. You wait around for hours and hours to catch the fish, and then I gotta take the hook out of its mouth somehow. Like, then you're basically performing surgery on an animal. Like, I'm not gonna wait around for 3 hours to do something I'm scared to do.
Correct. That's my whole thing.
I ain't doing that. Moving on.
So
Junior college sports have moved all of their fall sports to the spring. Keep moving.
You know what? Just hit the brakes on this one.
Okay. Well, the National Junior College Athletic Association has went ahead and just said, you know what? No sports this fall. Jalen, do you think the NCAA is next?
No, because the kind of dollars that are at stake are vastly different. I wanted to stop on this topic to say to all of you JUCO athletes that have goals of going D1, that have goals to go into the professional ranks, that have goals to going into the Olympics, you can do it. this is only a step back for a step up. Your chance is going to come.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up because while many sports fans say, oh, it's just junior college, it's not that big a deal, but there are a lot of players that have pro potential that end up in junior college for various reasons, and some transfer and some because of grades or other things. So there are some players that are going to be impacted. Their careers, their professional careers are going to be impacted by this decision. But man, I just want to see sports again. I just want to see, I mean, just wear a mask so we can see sports again. Please, just put on a mask so we can see sports again. Please. Well, I do have some live action of competitive basketball featuring a very famous actor. Keep it moving or hit the brakes.
The brakes.
Jalen, Woody Harrelson, famous Billy Hoyle, still out here getting buckets late into his 50s. We have footage. Look at him bring up the ball. Look at that floor general right there. Woody's doing his thing. Oh, right past one defender, over another defender. You can't double Woody Harrelson. You can't stop this man. Look at that over the head Larry Bird pass. What do you think about Harrelson's old man buckets?
Star White Man Can't Jump, along with Wesley Snipes. Anytime you're getting royalty checks like that, you should be able to go to the park and get buckets. But that just gave me a snapshot of what you gonna look like in another 5 or 10 years playing rec ball.
Oh, Jalen, I got bad news. I already look like that. So people say that you and I are kind of like White Man Can't Jump with the interracial partnership, but neither of us can jump. So you and I are not like White Man Can't Jump. We both can't
And
jump.
neither one of us can shoot off the glass either.
No. You know me, I can't even score. When
Runners and floaters.
Back, we have what Patrick Mahomes has set for his goals,
We're
and Jalen will
man.
celebrate a building that means so much to him. Both of that in just 2 minutes when Jalen and Jacoby returns. Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen, Patrick Mahomes has signed a 10-year deal that could be worth $500 million. But he says he is not satisfied. He wants to match Tom Brady's 6 championships. That means 5 more championships for the young quarterback. What do you think about him setting his goals that high?
When you walk into an office, you sign a 10-year deal, which most people, including myself, didn't realize NFL players could still do. Mm-hmm. You sign for over $500 million
with incentives
and an average salary that's going to continue to place you amongst the highest paid athletes in any sport. What do you expect him to say after he signs that contract? He just won in regular season MVP, a Super Bowl, and the MVP of that game. He's very young and talented, and they got weapons. Oh my goodness, they got weapons. However, the one thing that they should have done, like I keep telling you, they have a secret weapon. His name is Eric Bieniemy. And when they gave that contract to Patrick Mahomes, they should have also gave him one as the associate head coach and handcuffed those guys together for a really long time. We'll see if they get that done.
That is a really good point. And also, it is like, of course, that's what you're going to say. You're going to say, yeah, I'm trying to win 6 championships. However, over the course of the next 10 years, I think the realistic expectations are probably 2 Super Bowls, not 5 Super Bowls. But God bless him for aiming high. Moving on, Jalen, our guy, Jorge Masvidal, our guy, the game-bred fighter, took the fight in Abu Dhabi on Fight Island in just 6 days' notice. And he went into the ring and had a good first round, but slowed down from there against Kamaru Usman. Usman used a lot of clinches, a lot of toe stomping. It was not a very interesting fight to watch. However, it was a good night of fights. What do you think about Masvidal and Usman?
You know that's our guy. And in the first round, he came out striking, Jacoby. And a couple of things you left off. Without his trainer, who had tested positive for COVID-19, but also needed to lose 20 pounds in a handful of days and take a flight to Flight Island and then promote the fight. So it was a great performance for him. I would have loved to see him get it done then, because maybe all of a sudden another prime striker like a Conor McGregor looks at him and say, I want to try to come after that belt. But you want to give Usman his credit, as you mentioned, but our guy will be in position to fight for the belt again.
It's interesting you bring up Conor because Conor and Masvidal are such big stars because their fights are so fun to watch because they are strikers. But people like Usman and Khabib, they're more effective at winning the fight. They're just not as fun to watch because they're such good grapplers and wrestlers. Like that fight, I stayed up way past my bedtime to watch that fight, and it didn't climax the way I wanted the night to.
Too many toe stomps, by the way.
Too many toe stomps. The refs need to say something. Like, dog, stop talking. Like, I know this is not against the rules, but just stop doing it because it's annoying to watch. Also, Masvidal, he was limping. He must have been limping around all the next day. Jalen, a building that means a lot to you has been brought to the ground. I'm talking about the Palace of Auburn Hills. Please pay homage to this place that has brought you so much joy.
So initially when the Detroit Pistons left the city, when I was a youngster, a lot of adults were unhappy. So if you're going to move to Pontiac and go to the Silverdome, you better deliver. And they drafted Isaiah. And that was one of the best things that ever happened for the franchise. So now you can move a little bit further when you start making a little bit more money. And they moved to the Palace in Auburn Hills. And the Bad Boys delivered back-to-back championships. And then all of a sudden, Bad Boys 2 with Chauncey Billups and Rip Hamilton delivers another one. I got a chance to play in that building, Jacoby, early 90s, and did a backwards dunk when I tossed it up under my arm against Iowa State. You might have to Google that. It was nasty.
We'll be back tomorrow, ESPN, 4 o'clock.